All right, so we are going to get started. Alhamdulillah, رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Today is all about detoxing, alhamdulillah, according to the principles, the essential principles of natural health. So if that's something that you're curious about, want to know more about, then you are in the right place, alhamdulillah. Just a little bit of housekeeping very quickly. Inshallah, I will try to keep to 1 hour. Last time we went over a little bit, but alhamdulillah, it's all good. If anyone does need to drop off after an hour, that's no problem. Inshallah, we'll get the recording out within a day. So the meeting is being recorded, and it will be available just for a limited amount of time. And then if you're already receiving emails from Rihla Wellness, then you'll get notified when the recording is available, inshallah. Um, so I want to just start with a quick question you can answer in the chat. Has anyone done any kind of a detox before? If you have or if you haven't, alhamdulillah, you can answer in the chat. Yes, mashallah. Miriam, alhamdulillah, you've done a detox before. Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. So, alhamdulillah, if you've done a detox before and if you've done a detox with me before, you'll be familiar with some of what we're saying, what we're going to cover. There will be a little bit of new information as well, inshallah, because even if you've done a detox before or a detox with me, I don't always dig so deep into some of the information that we're going to cover, alhamdulillah. So let's get started. Just a little bit about me. Some of you might be familiar with this already. I won't spend too much time on it this time around. But as I've mentioned before, I started Rihla Wellness and my tea business. I was and still am raising 5 children. And through all of that, pregnancy, breastfeeding, childbirth, newborn, kids, childhood, illnesses and childhood health. All of that was herb-based and natural medicine focused as much as possible. But I did hit a wall because, there's only so much that you can do from learning online or learning from books or the advice and tips that people might, share and pass along, So everything that I had looked up online or looked in the library, and the bits of information that people had been giving me in that time, if it was a natural thing to do, then of course I would have tried it. But there were some things that just didn't seem to progress or improve, issues like pneumonia or asthma or eczema. And I realized I needed a lot more knowledge and a lot more of a deeper understanding. And that's what led to me to spend 3 years training to become a master herbalist. And from that experience, as I was learning more, I was applying what I was learning, to myself or to my family. And that's when I finally started to see a lot of breakthroughs in those issues, especially those chronic issues or something that's a little bit more complex or something that just, habitually we would encounter, like without fail, the entire household, used to get sick every fall. And without fail, after eating certain things, there would be asthma breakouts and eczema breakouts. And once I had a better understanding through my training of what was going on and what was some of the missing pieces to help kind of get that under control, that's when I started to see those things kind of resolve and dissipate, alhamdulillah. So the training aspect of natural health is really valuable, especially if you are really hoping to see some kind of transformation with your health or with the health of a loved one, if it's your child or a spouse or just someone that you are working with or care about. And if you can work with somebody who has that knowledge, whether you have the time or the ability to take that knowledge yourself or work with somebody who is knowledgeable, that's really kind of what's going to help you see that progress and that transformation, inshallah. So that's what I decided to do for myself. And, you can read much more about that in an interview. The link is posted on my website. But, that journey took me from just working on the folks in my home to working with people in the community and people who knew people, alhamdulillah, and working primarily through referrals. And, now it's to the point, alhamdulillah, where I get to work with people from different parts of the world. And that's primarily why I practice the way that I do. So Rihla Wellness is my herbal practice, and that is primarily operated online because I have people in different places. It could be in Europe, or it can be in the Middle East, or it could be anywhere. And I want there to be a consistency in that level of service wherever someone is, so that someone who doesn't get to work with me in person is not at a disadvantage, alhamdulillah. So the Rihla Wellness work is primarily through customized herbal wellness plans, and the Tayyib herbal business, which is something that I started this year, allows me to make my herbal formulas that I primarily use with my clients available to a wider audience, alhamdulillah. And that was really important to me, to be able to get to the point where I was able to do that, so that I could just, inshallah, try to support more people, alhamdulillah. And I'll share just a little bit about kind of the philosophy of how I practice as an herbalist, because there's so many different ways to do traditional medicine and to practice herbalism, and my focus is on the healing tradition of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as well as Muslim practitioners. Because we as an ummah are in so many parts of the world, and we work with so many different plants from just maybe our own kind of cultural traditions, as well as knowing what are some of the favored herbs in our Islamic tradition overall. And so that approach is really the way that I like to approach herbal medicine. So my training is in Western herbalism primarily, so the Americas and Western Europe. But alhamdulillah, having traveled different parts of the world and just, being a constant student of natural health and medicine, knowing that there are plants everywhere, right? Being able to kind of pull from that knowledge from wherever there have been Muslims working with plants, and making that a really important part of the work that I do, alhamdulillah. So I'll just quickly explain a little bit about what Islamic herbal medicine kind of looks like from my standpoint, which is, really going to kind of center around what is considered the plant-based healing approach of prophetic medicine, right? There's so many different things to Tibb an-Nawawi. There's ruqya, there's the body work, there's the hijama. There's working with not just honey as an animal material, but working with other things like sheep fat or camel urine. And these are not a part of what I work with, but it's primarily just looking at the prophetic tradition as it related to the plants that either Rasulullah would have advised to use, or that the Sahaba used during his time, all the way forward through to today. And then on the other side of this, all of this knowledge about working with plants is a part of this much larger body of traditional herbalism, whether we're talking about, sort of the ancient sort of early peoples in, perhaps Mesopotamia or something, or the Fertile Crescent area. And then, of course, all of what is and isn't recorded among the indigenous systems throughout the world, whether it's, the different regions of Africa or the indigenous, parts of Oceania or, the Arab folk medicine traditions or something like this. Um, and then we know what is recorded from history and the early history of medicine from ancient Egypt and the Ayurveda text and traditional Chinese medicine. And so all of that kind of helps inform this larger understanding of plant medicine and herbalism. But again, really trying to pull in what is going to be the most kind of relevant for us from an Islamic standpoint, and centering those practices and really kind of uplifting those practices, because Islamic herbal medicine, sits at this really powerful intersection of prophetic wisdom and the healing traditions that have shaped Muslim practitioners, right? So when we talk about Islamic herbal medicine, it's not specifically Tibb Nawawi, it's not Unani Tibb, which is, something of its own. But it is really purely this plant-based healing, alhamdulillah. And this is important to kind of recognize because there are plenty of traditions and so much information about herbal medicine. And if you are someone that's come from the West, for instance, that tradition is not really aligned with the values and the beliefs that we hold dear in Islam, right? And so, trying to really navigate that when you're interested in natural medicine can be tricky, right? And some of the practices and some of the ideas on the benefits of certain plants or the ways to work with certain plants or the reasons why, diseases or illnesses happen or don't happen. And, these kinds of things can be interesting. A lot of it can be sort of incorrect when we think of it from an Islamic standpoint. And much of contemporary herbal medicine, at least in the West, erases this aspect of the Muslim heritage. So, here in the Gulf, we have a lot of access to all different kinds of traditional systems, whether it's Ayurveda or Chinese medicine or Arab folk medicine. But again, these all have their own traditional bases. So for Islamic herbal medicine, it's really all about being informed about and connecting with all of the influences on our health, and understanding the prophetic wisdom around that, but also recognizing that prophetic wisdom is also quite consistent with what natural healers have often said, for thousands of years in terms of, the influence of diet and our environment or our constitution on our health. And then leveraging that to develop personalized plans for better health, right? And unlike something like Unani Tibb, which is energetic medicine, okay, Islamic herbal medicine is not specifically an energetic type of medicine. We're not going to be purely theoretical according to, the temperament of the food or the temperament of the body or the temperament of the illness. Instead, we're going to be much more evidence-based and observation-driven with a spotlight on Muslim herbalists past and present. So that really kind of describes my approach to herbalism and how I practice. And it is a bit different because it's not purely theoretical. And it's really important to me that, when I'm working with someone or when I'm advising someone, that we key into what's actually happening with their body, regardless of what, a theory says should or shouldn't be happening, alhamdulillah. And theory has its place and it's very relevant. But even within the Muslim practitioners from maybe the golden age of Islam, there was also, a difference of opinion around how theoretical we should approach health and healing. So all that to say, it's really a wonderful opportunity to take the good of what we know about health and healing and our history and bring it forward and continue to carry it forward and to, shine this really beautiful spotlight on our Islamic herbal medicine tradition. And that really is kind of where I see my mission, which is, through my herbal practice and through my herbal apothecary to really help cultivate a healer in every home and a community of herbal healers knowledgeable about the correct, effective, safe, varied, and inspiring use of plants and that connection to our faith. And that varied use of plants, that's really important because depending on someone's cultural tradition or what they have just come to know in their own experience, they might work with a plant like marshmallow, for instance, and they might work with the root, which is really common in the Americas and Western Europe. But in other parts of the world, they might only work with the flower or they might work with the seed. And you might be advised or you might hear like, well, we only work with this part. And so this is the only way to work with it. And when you start to really understand that there's this rich tapestry of how to work with plants, and Muslims have worked with different kinds of plants and different parts of these plants in really rich ways, it really kind of opens up a lot of those possibilities, alhamdulillah. So let's just start tonight talking about the basic kind of principles of natural health and healing, and that all begins with this concept of balance. Okay, so we want to start with balance, and we can kind of really understand this really well just with this, alhamdulillah, this ayah from the Quran, from the divine speech of Allah. Allah revealed, this is just a portion of Surah Al-Hijr, that he caused to grow therein, meaning the earth, something of every well-balanced thing. And natural healers will talk a lot all the time about things being out of balance and bringing things back into balance, this system or this, this organ or something is out of balance and we need to bring it back into balance. And, when we look at, how regardless of which kind of traditional medicine system we're talking about, many of them, I would say probably a majority of them, all kind of have this idea of balance at the core of how they view the body and health and healing, alhamdulillah, and the importance of, restoring balance, reestablishing and maintaining a balanced and harmonized environment, both internally and externally as much as we can. So going a little bit further into kind of what natural health really focuses on, I want us to really have a really strong sense of the role of these differing lifestyle factors that are all within our control. And so natural health really is a lot about helping to kind of elevate the things that we can do, the shifts that we can make in order to either bring things back into balance, improve and strengthen our health and well-being overall. And the first place to kind of begin looking at that is in terms of our diet and what we eat. But diet is also more than that, right? Like it's also, in a broader sense, about everything that we consume, the air that we breathe, what we drink, the thoughts that we have, the entertainment that we, kind of spend some of our time with. And all of these things that we're consuming and that we are exposed to as a matter of like our actual food diet, and then a kind of more abstract idea about diet, all of these need to be balanced with what and how we are eliminating the byproducts or the waste of these things that we've consumed, right? So, if you think about how we pile in just kind of, all this food and, whatever we're drinking and everything we're thinking and feeling, all of these byproducts of living and functioning have to be eliminated regularly, multiple times a day. And, when that falls out of balance, or when the diet, what we're consuming is already kind of not in the right mix and the right kind of balance, we start to see issues, right? So between our diet and our elimination, these are two um, of the really essential factors that weigh heavily on our health outcomes. The next two relate to number one, the level and quality of our exercise, our activity, the things that we kind of occupy our time with, the things that we busy ourselves with. And then that is balanced by the level and quality of rest, not just sleep, but the level and quality of rest that we get, right? So that can even include things like mindfulness and things like solitude, um, things like, quiet times of reflection, along with getting really good quality sleep, the number of hours that we need. And there are some differences of opinion. I think the bare minimum for us as women is about 7 hours, but I think a little bit more is what's recommended. And if we can't, get a solid block of maybe 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep in a day, then inshallah, if we are able to, we should try to fit in some time for a nap if possible, or at least a little bit of quiet time, alhamdulillah. And so those are the next two, right? Looking at our level and quality of our activity, and then balancing that out with rest. Okay. And then the final two we look at are related to this idea of connection, whether we're talking about, social connection, because us as humans, right, we are social creatures, but we also need to be thinking about our spiritual connection as well. So from the social connection standpoint, it's really about prioritizing those high dose relationships, those people that, we feel help us fill our cup, and that we, just feel renewed by, and just really well loved by, alhamdulillah. And then at the same time, we make sure to prioritize our essential number one connection. And for us as Muslims, that's our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that we understand that a healthy spiritual life is shown by research to have a measurable, significant effect on positive health outcomes. And so that's why, I emphasize these 6 factors of diet elimination, activity, rest, and then social and spiritual connection. Because these are the things that if we make the right kinds of shifts, depending on the kind of illness or issues that we're dealing with, we'll see, inshallah, significant improvement as we kind of work these into the ideal mix for us. And for each person, it is a little bit different. So when we are trying to start to really get a good handle on our health, and we're starting to think more about the things that we can do to make this difference and to make this improvement, detoxing is one of these things that comes up about how to do that, right? And a detox just simply it's a reset or a retooling of specific systems and organs in our bodies to accomplish a few things. Okay, it'll help us improve our elimination of toxins, waste, and byproducts. It also will help with our nutrient absorption. And we also can purify and strengthen our system overall, inshallah. So let's start by going through kind of the why. We'll talk about, who detoxes are ideal for, when we should consider doing them. And then, of course, we'll get into, some of the ideal ways to do them, how to do them. Okay. So first off, let's kind of spend some time thinking about why we really want to be trying to do these kinds of detoxes. And, as we kind of talked a little bit just a minute ago, right, about the different things that we encounter and consume on a day-to-day basis. All of the foods that we're eating and the things we're encountering in just our environment, even within our household, we are actually encountering so many kinds of things that require us, to deal with the byproducts of whatever those things are, okay? So really, we're looking at it from an elimination standpoint, right? Anytime somebody mentions a detox, they're implying or they're hinting that there are some toxins that need to be eliminated out of the body, right? So everything we do, whether we're aware of it or not, is leaving traces of waste and byproducts from the food and the air that we breathe, as we've mentioned, but also the metabolic processes of our cells and our organs, right? Um, the thoughts that we think, the emotions that we feel, the hormones, all of these things can build up, and if they're not effectively kind of processed as a routine kind of matter of how our bodies function, and they don't get broken down and eliminated the way that they need to, they become a source of a source of toxins in our body. And we can kind of think of them as endotoxins. And so, from a more biological standpoint, an endotoxin is going to kind of be limited to the certain kinds of bacteria within our system, more likely the pathogenic bacteria. But then a broader kind of view of what toxins are, all of these other things that I mentioned, the things that internally are happening from what we're consuming or just what's happening with the routine functioning of our systems that's creating these byproducts and waste. These are all sources of endotoxins. Alhamdulillah. Then the other side of this is exotoxins, right? So these are the things that we're coming in contact with, the poisons and toxins in maybe in the air, in the air within our home, maybe from fragrances and air fresheners. It could be, the air pollution that's just outside from car exhaust, car fumes, and factory pollution. It could be things that we're wearing and things that we touch. So the clothing, our furniture, our children's toys, other kinds of household items, right? All the usual items and everything that is, filled with plastics or microplastics and phthalates and BPA and Teflon and aluminum and all these different kinds of materials and metals that all of these are sources of industrial and household chemicals that are toxic to our bodies. And they are everywhere. They're everywhere. Everywhere you look, right? You have these sources of these kinds of exotoxins. And you also find them among the things that we eat, right? The moderately processed and the ultra processed foods, the colors, the flavors, the preservatives, all of these things are sources of exotoxins and can overwhelm our system and our body's ability to deal with them in an ideal way. So, at this point, you might be thinking like, well, it sounds like I'm full of toxins. And I would say, yes, you probably are. We probably are. And, the reality is when you think of, just your regular day of all of the things you do in a day, all the things that you encounter in that day, all the things you've been exposed to or have taken in, this is where all of these toxins can be coming from. And subhanAllah, just one day, and then you kind of multiply it into weeks or months, subhanAllah. And we are not actively doing an intentional, deliberate detox, all of the time. Our bodies are designed, alhamdulillah, divinely, to do a kind of a detox through certain organs within our systems. And then we also have this commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to purify ourselves. And there are a few ways that we do that. But when you kind of think about everything that you encounter and the things that you eat and the quality of the things you eat and the quality of the things that you encounter, and then you multiply that over however many days and weeks and months, and you can imagine the toxic load that you're bearing, subhanAllah. So what does this look like for us when we think about just how our biology um, has been created, right? Like we have, alhamdulillah, these divinely designed elimination channels um, that really establish these noble functions to nourish, cleanse, and optimize our systems. So it's not that, there is no kind of inherent way for us to deal with these toxins. It's more a matter of, are we overburdening our system in trying to do that role and fulfill that function, just by matter of the way that we live nowadays and the way that, kind of certain things become unavoidable just by a matter of like waking up and going outside, all of the things that you are encountering. So, subhanAllah, before I get too much more into like how we can deal with these things, we can spend a little bit of time just looking at the biology of it. And, mashallah, we have our primary detox organ, which is our liver. Okay. And we have all of these different elimination channels through our colon, through our skin, when we are through the pores in our skin and through our sweat glands. This is an elimination pathway. Of course, our colon, also our kidneys and our bladder, um, and and then also through our blood and lymph. So our blood is not just simply bringing nutrients to all the different cells and parts of our body, but it's also carrying away cellular waste. And our lymph, our lymphatic fluid, and our lymph, this is also a mechanism for eliminating certain kinds of wastes and toxins. That's why our lymph nodes might swell up like at our throats, or at the other parts of our body where we have our lymph nodes. These can swell up as they are trying to deal with certain immune issues that could be pathogenic, or immune issues that are just trying to deal with some of that toxic load, alhamdulillah. So these different elimination channels, they play multiple roles. And our digestive tract, which is going to include, not just our stomach, but it's our liver, and it includes our intestines and things, this is bearing really essential roles, right? It's the breakdown and digestion of our food. It's the absorption and transportation of nutrients, and it's the elimination of waste. And it's not just simply the food waste, right? We know that research tells us about this process of autophagy, which is the process of your cells kind of dealing with dead cellular organisms or damaged cellular organisms, and kind of what they do to process breaking them down and getting them out of our system. This is a part of that autophagy. Okay. Our liver is not just a part of our digestive system, and it also has a role to play in our hormone function. So the liver is responsible for the manufacturing of our cholesterol, which we need to make our hormones, alhamdulillah. The liver helps us break down our excess emotions and all kinds of things. And when there's just too many different things for it to deal with, our liver function starts to get more sluggish, and we start to, see the result of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about, signs where our body might be telling us we need some help with trying to eliminate these, these toxins and this waste. So a detox focuses typically on one or some of these elimination channels, the colon, if it's a colon cleanse, or there can be, programs and products for doing a liver detox, or working on the kidneys, or working on the blood, alhamdulillah. But as I was mentioning, what can happen is there are going to be, signs within our bodies letting us know that we need some support, that the body needs some support in dealing with the toxic load that it's bearing. Okay, and it could be just from something as, you know, what feels routine that we've come to accept or deal with, is chronic conditions. Um, but also if we have something like a complex illness, or if we just are seeing, we need some kind of a nutritional boost, right? These are kind of um, three of the things to consider for whether, a detox would be ideal, or at the right time for you. So let's talk a little bit more about um, what some of these signs look like, and who would be kind of ideal for doing a detox, as well as, um, how often to do something like this. So, number one, when we want to kind of think about when to cleanse, I mentioned, yes, if you're dealing with a chronic issue, maybe you suffer from, I mentioned asthma and eczema. These are two chronic conditions, but it could be others, right? Um, you'll have these kinds of signs of what's considered or what's called auto intoxication. So, with asthma, it's that struggling to breathe, it's the wheezing, it can be triggered by something in the environment, or could be triggered by foods, or could be triggered by stress. And that lets you know that if it's the environment, if it's food, or if it's stress, the liver is overburdened trying to deal with whatever that trigger is, and it can't deal with it fast enough. And so now it's coming out and showing up in the body in a different way. So this is a sign of auto intoxication. If you have skin issues like acne, not just something like eczema, but acne a lot of times can be a sign of an overburdened liver. Other signs of auto intoxication can include brain fog, upset stomach, constipation, digestive issues, also mood issues, allergies. These are some of the things to be keeping in mind if you're wondering, okay, do I need to think about doing a detox, or how do I know that I might need to begin thinking about doing a detox? Okay. And if you are thinking about doing a detox or doing some kind of a cleanse, then some of the important things that you should consider, number one, I don't recommend any kind of like intensive cleansing or detox program for someone who is pregnant. If you're breastfeeding, there can be certain allowances made for the kind of maybe herbal aids that support your detoxing, or some of the things that you're going to be kind of including as a part of your detox program, just because of what can be transferred through the breast milk, inshallah. Um, the reason why I don't recommend pregnant women do any kind of a detoxing is uh, it's just the priority should be on your nutrition, inshallah. And if you're concerned about, nutrient absorption, if you can prioritize really clean eating and really good absorbable sources of the certain vitamins that you need, then inshallah, this is the ideal approach for someone who's pregnant. If someone has, a weakened system, they have a complex illness, they have maybe some kind of a chronic issue, a detox is still possible for them, but they need the right kind of support. And you should be working with somebody who understands how to help them do a detox in that kind of a condition. It's not that they couldn't do it, but there just needs to be a little bit of wisdom about how you would approach it. So, the other thing is, you might be wondering, okay, is this something that a child could do? There are ways to support the elimination channels within a child's body without putting them on a quote unquote like detox program. And again, this requires, just some understanding of how to do that, working with somebody who understands how to do that. But for sure, there are kids that deal with, chronic issues and chronic health issues, and their bodies are overburdened, and um, some kind of a cleanse would be beneficial to them if done in the right way, inshallah. And then the last thing to kind of think about while we're just looking at some of these factors here is how often to cleanse. And ideally, again, kind of going back to um, all the things we encounter in our day and, multiplied over however many days and weeks. A routine kind of a detox is just a pretty good idea, because from season to season, the environment is changing and our bodies are changing in response to the changes in the environment. But our systems might not be keeping up with the toxic load that it's just been burdened with. So trying to kind of build in some kind of a routine detox makes sense. Does it need to be monthly? Probably not. Uh, Maybe quarterly, maybe with the seasons. This is just, kind of you take advantage of the seasons changing and you shifting your priorities, inshallah, being a little bit more intentional as the seasons change and including a detox as a part of that, those seasonal shifts would be one way that I would recommend that you could do something like that. Alhamdulillah. And then, of course, we know just from the sunnah practices that certain kinds of cleansing that can be recommended can happen throughout the month, right? So there's the fasting on the white days. There's the cupping on, after the white days or around the white days. I know there's differences of opinion on the ideal times to do cupping hijama. But there are periods where routine detox can make sense, inshallah. Um, so let's look more about kind of what an ideal detox program would consist of. And when you really start to look at, especially if you've done a detox with me, if you really start to think about, okay, so this is why I was doing it the way that, I set it out for you, like these three pillars on this slide of eliminate, cleanse, and nourish are really the ideal way to do a detox, to support your system and to gain the most benefit, inshallah. But not all detoxes are designed this way. Okay. But before I get too far into that, I just want to, kind of tie in what we just said a minute ago, which is when we were thinking about some of the routine ways that we can do a detox, one of the best examples and one of the oldest methods of detoxing in natural or traditional medicine is fasting, right? So for us as Muslims, we get to, that time of year when we fast in Ramadan. Fasting from a health standpoint is an intermittent fast, right? And this kind of intermittent fast puts our body in a ketogenic state, right? So we enter into a state of ketosis where we're burning ketones instead of glucose. And this helps to activate that autophagy mechanism, right? Where our cells are working on breaking down and eliminating any dead or damaged cellular organisms, right? So fasting is a really potent detox, alhamdulillah, and it's a part of our Islamic tradition to kind of, if we're able to, incorporate some kind of routine fasting into our, maybe monthly lives. I don't say daily lives, but maybe our monthly lives, inshallah ta'ala. But at least we get one really good potent fast in when we fast in Ramadan, if we're able to do so. So that's, one kind of a detox. But then we also have within our tradition hijama. So cupping is a kind of a detox because it's very cleansing to the blood, and this is why it is a recommended medical treatment for us. It is one of the really fast and efficient ways to, quickly kind of purify our blood, alhamdulillah. And another way to approach blood cleansing, some of you might have heard of leech therapy, right? Which is also another kind of blood cleansing or a detox. So just off of those three examples, whether it's fasting or cupping or leech therapy, these are some examples of kinds of detoxes, okay? And then you have these 1 day or 3 day or 21 day or 28 day kinds of detoxes where some kind of a program and you're going to maybe follow some dietary recommendations. You might be advised to take different kinds of supplements for a certain number of days, right? And this is a different kind of a detox. Whatever way that you have done a detox before or have heard about these kinds of detoxes, they're just some among many ways to do it. But the best ones will incorporate these three outcomes mentioned on the slide, which is eliminate, cleanse, and nourish. These are really essential outcomes in any well-structured detox program. So number one, when we talk about eliminate, we're talking about being able to throw out, the bad toxins, get rid of the waste. It's like taking the trash out, and some kinds of detox programs will only focus on, elimination, right? So if you're doing a colonic or doing an enema, these are really just focusing on the elimination through the colon cleansing. Okay. And the next important kind of pillar to a really solid detox program is focused on cleansing, right? So purifying and refreshing. This is like, cleaning house, right? So you take the trash out, but you still need to clean your house. And you'll have some kinds of detox programs that only focus on cleansing, right? So a liver flush or a parasite cleanse are some examples of just focusing on the cleansing aspect. And then the third piece of this is nourishing, right? So it's all about healing and strengthening the body, or you can kind of think of it as like the renovating and the rebuilding of your home, right? So you're getting all of the trash out, you're cleaning your home, and now you get to work on the renovation and the rebuild or the redesign, alhamdulillah. And there are some detox programs that only focus just on maybe that strength or that nutrition aspect of their programs, right? So if you think of like a juice cleanse is really all about, bringing in lots and lots of concentrated nutrition, helping cleanse the blood, but it doesn't necessarily address the need to eliminate or supporting the other kinds of cleansing channels within the body, alhamdulillah. And you need to have all three at the same time for the best experience and the best results. So if you've ever kind of, before maybe working with me, if you've ever read about detoxes and read about people's experiences with detoxes, you might have gotten, all kinds of different results and feedback from people. You might have seen, people talk about things like, yeah, it was very difficult, it was very rough, and they had like, almost like they came down with the flu, or they had like really low energy, or they had, all these other kinds of different experiences. Usually this is because one of those three is missing, right? So if you are doing a detox program, but it's not including something around nutrition, you're not going to have enough energy, okay? If you're doing a detox program and maybe you're focusing on energy, but or the nutrition side of things, but it's not really addressing the elimination, then you might experience a lot of digestive upset, stomach aches. You might be really bloated because the elimination is not happening, right? So that your blood, your cells are doing their part, but then the waste and the byproducts have nowhere to go. They can't get out, alhamdulillah. So you find that these auto intoxication symptoms can be really intense on some detox programs because they have not addressed the elimination side of things well enough. And so those are just some of the things to kind of consider when you are looking at ways to detox. And here is, a couple of methods that I like to either incorporate for myself or work with my clients on. And the first one is fasting, which we know how to do from the Sunnah of the ways to structure our fasting day. And we know that there are certain days in the week, Mondays and Thursdays. These are the better times for fasting in the week. And then monthly, we have the white days. And then there are certain sacred times like fasting in Ramadan, alhamdulillah, and other times of the year around the Muslim calendar, Islamic calendar. But as a part of that, I also really encourage and strongly recommend that any kind of a fast is built around a very nutrient dense suhoor and a very nutrient dense iftar, right? So it's not just that you're fasting. And yes, your body will go into a fasting state, and that biologic process of autophagy will definitely, happen after a few hours of fasting. But your overall fasting experience can be benefited by focusing on the nutrition before you fast and at the end of your fasting day, alhamdulillah. So, some smart ways to think about your suhoor is to really try to imagine that since your body's going to be cleansing for so many hours, you can help it do that job by, providing it with a lot of really good assimilable nutrients. So maybe something like a smoothie, maybe you have a nice healthy tea, a nice vitamin-rich tea, alhamdulillah, as a part of your suhoor routine. And then, again, at iftar, you're having that a little bit more along with whatever else you might be having. And this will help provide your system with what it needs to do its fast, to do the detoxing in the best way, right? So if we take in a good amount of nutrition at suhoor, then inshallah, while we're fasting, we're going to still be able to eliminate. We're still going to be able to have a good amount of strength and energy, inshallah. And then, of course, that cleansing is going to be done much more efficiently, inshallah. Okay. The other approach that I like to take for a detox is through blended juices. So I say blended and not, not getting any kind of like strained juice, but you need the fiber because that fiber is going to help, with your gut and with your colon health, inshallah. So any kind of a blended juice smoothie is going to be very, very, very beneficial. It's going to make it really easy to provide your system with the high doses of nutrients that it needs. And you're able to kind of make it so nourishing and so nutrient dense with lots of different add-ins and things, different kinds of supplements like whole food supplements, which I'll speak a little bit about. But typically, if you are going to do any kind of a detox and you are trying to make it really nourishing and nutrient dense, then I recommend a green smoothie because greens, calorie for calorie, are just your biggest source of nutrition for the amount of calories that you can take in, alhamdulillah. There's just nothing more nourishing than greens per the research, alhamdulillah. It's not just my opinion, Allahu Akbar. So any kind of, smoothie that's like built around greens and fruit is going to be really, really beneficial and ideal. And then there's other kinds of blended juices. You could do carrot, orange, and bell peppers, the red or yellow peppers, alhamdulillah. This is going to be really great for blood sugar and really good for vitamin C. You could just do some kind of a blended juice with lots of different tropical fruits that might be in season. And then just some more simpler juices like apple or cherry or grape, but again, they should be blended so that you get the benefit of the fiber. And there's a lot of nutrition in the skin of these juices. So we want to keep that nutrition for, the obvious health reasons, alhamdulillah. And then the great thing about doing a blended juice is you can add in things like chia seeds, which are great for your omega-3s and additional fiber, right? Flax seeds, and chia and flax seeds are also good protein sources. So that's going to help kind of keep up your strength and your energy. Something like Irish sea moss is wonderful to include because it's just full of minerals. It's so nourishing, alhamdulillah. And if you include some kind of an herbal tea that is, going to be some nourishing herbs and maybe herbs that target certain kinds of symptoms or actions, systems or actions, inshallah, then you'll gain the benefit by building a detox smoothie around these kinds of things. So when I have worked with clients, especially women that are doing a detox for hormone balancing, mashallah, they have these really dense, mashallah, really dense smoothie that they have to drink. But it's really good, Allahu Akbar. It's greens and it's fruit, and I have them add in lots of other kinds of whole food supplements. And after several days of these juices, if it's time for their cycle or around the time that their cycle is supposed to start, they have noticed this really powerful shift in just the onset of their periods, as an example, because nutrition can make such a difference in our health, right? Nutrition can make such a difference in our health, and we're giving our body the time that it needs to do the work that it needed to do in cleaning up the system. And when we are doing any kind of a detox and a nourishing detox, and it's around the time that our cycle or our period is supposed to start, oftentimes women have reported to me that they just eased into their period, alhamdulillah, or they eased into it in a way that they just had not expected would have been possible. If I had said, just drink a juice and you'll have your period will be much better, a lot of times, they wouldn't have believed me until they experienced it themselves. And this is just a testimony of the power of nutrition and the power of supporting our body in the way that it needs to be supported in addressing the different kinds of health issues that we might have going on. So that's just one example, alhamdulillah. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing ways that we can bring in herbs, because as an herbalist, there's, wonderful ways to incorporate healing herbs into the things that we're doing for our health and well-being. And so when I do have clients work on any kind of a cleanse, we are going kind of week by week through the different elimination channels in the body. We start with the colon, then we work on the liver, then we work on the kidney and bladder, and then we work on the blood and the lymph. And we bring in different herbs at different points through these focus areas in order to help those systems and help those areas eliminate, cleanse, and nourish, right? So they're accomplishing those three things. It's not that the juice by itself is doing it, because it isn't going to do that by itself, but it is bringing in these herbs that are going to help make this program much more comprehensive, alhamdulillah. So as I've mentioned before, when we talk about working with herbs, it's really important to think about the effect or the property or the action that we want the herb to be taking within our bodies. Not that we think about the plants. And the plants are important to know, alhamdulillah, but it's much more important to know what the different actions are that you need, because there are so many different plants and they're scattered throughout the world, and not every place has, all of those same plants. But if you know that I need a plant that acts as an alternative, for example, then you have much more flexibility in accomplishing your health goal, regardless of which plant or which herbs are available to you. Alhamdulillah. And for a lot of us, especially those of us that might move around a lot, for those of us that are, on our hijrah journeys, we might not be in the same place, for 5, 10, 15 years. So wherever you go, if you understand what the herbal actions are, inshallah, you can find the plants that would be beneficial to work with. So from a detox standpoint, these are the 5 actions that I try to prioritize when I'm kind of formulating different teas to work with these different elimination systems. So the first one, alternative, this is the one that is going to be helping to do, number one, blood cleansing. But then you have alternatives that target specific systems or regions in the body. So for example, barberry, turmeric, and dandelion, those 3 are excellent liver alternatives. So you might have, heard a lot about, maybe turmeric is really good for cleansing and inflammation and this kind of thing. And it helps activate the liver and it helps the liver work more efficiently. Same thing with dandelion, same thing with barberry. And the interesting thing about barberry is it's kind of your natural metformin, right? So if you're able to work with barberry, this is kind of the natural form of the metformin blood sugar medication, alhamdulillah. Red clover and plantain are 2 kinds of plantain leaf. These are 2 kinds of blood cleansers, and they are so efficient and very powerful in helping cleanse the body. So red clover, for example, if I'm working with somebody who has some kinds of allergies, or they have some kind of a much more complex issue, red clover is a really good herb for killing pathogenic cells, right? So that could be tumor cells. It's excellent just in supporting blood health when we talk about things like cancer. It's really good for heart health. It's really good for our vascular system, for our capillaries and our arteries, alhamdulillah. Red clover is a weed that grows in much of the global north and the temperate part of the world. And so if you don't find something like red clover, there are alternatives that you could use in other places. Black seed is a great one if you're trying to find a good blood cleansing herb. Plantain is another alternative that is used a lot for certain kinds of inflammatory and skin issues where we know that the lymph is just a little bit too toxic, right? So if you think of something like a bee sting or a wasp sting, plantain is one of those plants that you could just pluck the leaves off of the ground, crush it in your hand, and put it on your bee sting or the wasp sting, and then it will, I won't say immediately, like within seconds, but within minutes, the swelling goes down and it helps to kind of pull the toxins out of the lymph and out of the body. So plantain is another one that I like to use when I have access to it for certain kinds of blood cleansing goals, inshallah. Next one is the next action is cathartic. So we talked again a lot about the importance of elimination as a part of a comprehensive detox program. So cathartics, this is another word for basically saying laxative herbs. And there's like a spectrum, some laxatives are very gentle, they're very mild, and some are very, very strong and very potent. But something like licorice is more of a mild cathartic. Rhubarb root is another very effective cathartic herb that supports gut health and colon health over the long term. So it's something that you could use kind of routinely and regularly without worrying about any long-term effects to the system. Same thing with Cascara sagrada. These are much more common to the Western herbal tradition, but Turkey rhubarb is a part of something that you would find also among Muslim practitioners from the East, alhamdulillah. And then, of course, we know that senna pod is a sunnah herb. Rasulullah recommended senna um, as, for constipation, alhamdulillah. Senna, though, is one of those herbs that I would call a low dose herb. You need to know how to work with it, and you need to make sure that you're kind of monitoring the effect on the system when you're working with senna, because it brings so much activity to the colon, and it brings so much hydration to the colon that it can wind up dehydrating certain bodies. It can have a really powerful effect depending on how much of it that you use. And the senna plant, depending on which part of the plant you work with, can be even stronger, right? So there's senna leaf, which is senna mekki, which is the leaf. And then there's senna pod. Senna pod is a little bit gentler. So when I do work with it, I only recommend using a small amount of it compared to some of the other gentler cathartic herbs, alhamdulillah. And this would be a part of, what would we'd include when we work on colon cleansing. Diuretics, if you're not familiar, diuretics just help you flush water flush fluids through your kidneys and bladder, okay, for elimination through your kidneys and bladder, Allahu Akbar. And there are so many diuretic herbs. One very common diuretic is just parsley. I didn't mention it here on the slide, but parsley is a really powerful diuretic. You could take a handful of parsley and boil it, make a tea from it. And if you were someone that had like puffy hands and feet, you drink some parsley tea, and inshallah, you would, likely see that you would start having to go to the washroom and eliminate out, mashallah. But black seed is a really strong diuretic. So if you are using black seed as a tea, I do recommend that you take a smaller amount, not too much, inshallah, until you see how your body works with it. Nettles, the nettle leaf and nettle seed are really strong for, especially the nettle seed, really strong diuretic effect on working on our kidneys. Corn silk, alhamdulillah, which they use a lot in other parts of the world, not so much in the Americas, but South America, as well as certain parts of like more Central and Eastern Europe, alhamdulillah. And uva ursi. Uva ursi is another really good, it's actually a urinary alternative. Okay, so it helps kind of cleanse and heal the area overall, as well as being a diuretic. So uva ursi is a really good one, mashallah. Another action that I like to include when I'm working on detox formulas is tonic herbs. Herbs that are tonic are going to be very nourishing to the body. They're also going to help kind of tighten and tone, kind of get things kind of normalized within certain systems of the body. So again, that's nettle. Nettle is a really good nourishing herb. Moringa, goji berries, garden cress, these are all kinds of tonic herbs, alhamdulillah. And then the last action that I like to include, just because I know how detoxing can be for us, even if it's constructed really well, even if the detox program is constructed really well, you still need to kind of leave a little space for a little bit of the unexpected. And so that's where I bring in nervines. Nervines work on the nervous system. They can be stimulating, they can be relaxing. However they are, they're going to help kind of strengthen and nourish the nervous system. So for some people doing a detox, they might experience a little bit of dysregulation in their nervous system. They might have an overwhelm, maybe overcome with some kinds of emotions. They might have a very moody moment or a very moody day. And so nervine herbs can help support their system when they might be experiencing that. And so rose is a really strong nervine, along with chamomile, linden or ihlamur. These are some really nice nervines. There's so many others, though. I could have mentioned sage, and sage is also alternative. I could have mentioned saffron, alhamdulillah. But when you are working on trying to, expand your familiarity with plants and how they work, understanding that, they're performing certain actions within our systems can really help. And depending on the plant that you work with, it's going to actually be doing more than one thing. Right? So a plant has more than one action that it's capable of. And when you understand that, then you'll pair it with other plants that help balance out those actions. So if, for example, I'm working with a cathartic herb or a diuretic herb, I'm going to add in a plant that's going to help with soothing and softening and maybe helping to hydrate or bring in some moistening properties. For example, because I know that working with cathartics can be very kind of drying and aggressive, or working with diuretics can be overstimulating sometimes. So this is where a little bit of that herbal wisdom becomes really, really helpful, inshallah. And when you understand that these plants are doing more than one thing, and that there are many more plants than even what I've mentioned here that are capable of these actions, then it helps you kind of have a broader view and a deeper appreciation of, the potency of herbal medicine and the ways that, we are able to access it and work with it. Alhamdulillah. So I'm going to talk a little bit more, and then I want to kind of open it up a little bit for some feedback or some questions. But the last kind of piece that I wanted to get through is the side effects of detoxing. And I don't mean this actually in the negative sense of what a side effect could be, but I actually am referring to these incredible outcomes that a lot of people, at least when they have completed a nice comprehensive program, have reported. So it's things like, incredible levels of energy. It's things like, these are typical kinds of side effects. Incredible levels of energy, a real kind of regulating and balancing effect on their moods, especially if this is a person who has historically dealt maybe with, mood imbalance issues, feeling like their wild food cravings have calmed down and reduced because they've brought in so much nutrition through their detox, alhamdulillah, feeling like their sleep habits have been more regulated. And for some people, even they see some improvement with their allergies. And that's, more of a function of that blood cleansing having been effectively done, alhamdulillah. When the blood is cleansed, mashallah, and it's done in a way that is nice and effective, you see a difference, a positive difference in allergy issues. And then some things that are a little less common, a little more atypical, I would say, is if you are doing a detox, you might experience some shifts in your weight. You might experience some degree of weight loss. And for some women, they have experienced maybe 6 to 8 pounds or 3 to 4 kilos, which is a little bit on the higher range within just, a few days of doing a detox. Other women, maybe they're more at like 1 to 2 kilos, 2 to 4 pounds, something like this. And then also, I mentioned this a little bit before, some women have reported, some people have reported an improvement in their hormones and in their hormone balancing. Hormones are a very kind of a complex issue to address, but when the nutrition improves and the system has been kind of reset through a detox, this kind of helps set the stage for much better hormone balancing work going forward, alhamdulillah. So those are just some of the wonderful side effects of doing a detox. And I think I mentioned once before a little bit about, when the detox program isn't well structured, then you might, have to contend with some kinds of unpleasant detox symptoms like a headache or low energy or what they call a detox flu. Okay. So, mashallah, the the last piece of this is just putting it all together for a healthy detox, right? And this is where you could do something like taking a nice blended green juice and pairing it with, a nice healing detox tea, like what's here on the screen as an example. And this could be a really smart detox approach for you, inshallah. So when you are trying to work on resetting your health and taking the benefit of doing a detox, then you'll want to keep several things in mind, right? That it's going to focus on those elimination pathways, that it's going to help your body cleanse overall, of course, but that it's also going to be bringing in loads and loads and loads of nutrition during the time that you're doing a detox, whether that's something like fasting, or it's a specific like 3-day or multi-day detox program overall, alhamdulillah. So this tea, this is just, a sample idea of, putting together some of those different herbal actions. When I work with clients, we don't use this specific tea. We're actually working with some other kinds of tea formulas, but this would be a very fine tea to include if you wanted to have a kind of a detox tea of your own. And one of the things that's really great about it is it's very cleansing, alhamdulillah, but it's full of antioxidants. And so antioxidants are going to help with your cells dealing with, that repair and their renewal, inshallah. Okay. So I know we've gone over our time, but I did want to leave a little bit of space for any questions that you might have, inshallah. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and stop sharing my screen, inshallah, and see if you guys have any questions for me.